Gang, well, welcome back to the Productivity Hub. This is where productivity habits unlock breakthroughs. We'd like to interview guest experts that have cracked the code on some element of productivity, specifically related to our core focus of productivity with your core business applications, whether that's Microsoft or Google ecosystem or some combination of both, which is more common than not. Looking at ways we can leverage the tools we already have more effectively, as well as set the stage for using AI tools and features as they release more effectively, which, by the way, like just kind of separate aside, I saw that Microsoft's Copilot is actually supposed to roll out. We're recording this right in November. We'll probably launch this episode by the end of November. So we might already have Microsoft Copilot by the time this goes live. And so it's getting real, people. All the stuff that we've watched is just unfolding so quickly in both of these environments. So our guest today is actually I'm kind of feel like I'm selfish because I'm gonna tap him and use him to help solve some of our own problems at R&B Communications. We build all sorts of software, and usually software is not just useful for one business or one situation. If it's useful for one group of people or one organization, it tends to have utility, maybe not in its entirety, but pieces of it could likely have utility in other places as well. And we've just always struggled at being able to like leverage those and figure out how to go after markets with software we already have. We could probably have, a dozen multi-million-dollar businesses in their own rights if we knew how to do that effectively. And fortunately, today we have David Dulany, who's the founder and CEO of Tenbound, which is the leading research and advisory firm that's focused on the B2B, the business-to-business SaaS or software as a service go-to-market strategy. It provides the tools and the tactics and the consulting and the community to help people like us in our situation that have either an idea or software figure out how to get it out to the right markets in the right way, in the right sequence and order. And so, David, it is awesome to have you on the pod. How are you doing today?
Hey, thank you. That great intro. That's better than I could do myself. So thanks. I appreciate that. Happy to help,
That's awesome. Excellent. So the kind of bulk of the topic we're going to get into today is all about sales and marketing in this B2B software industry. The particular application that we're going to thread this into, or application category, are going to be our email and calendar clients. So in the Google environment, that might be your Gmail, your Google Calendar, and your Microsoft. That's going to be your Outlook email and calendar client. And just talk about how that gets threaded into this topic, but we're really going to focus on your bread and butter, which is sales and marketing in the B2B software industry. So can you tell us, just like to begin with, like why is this important, and what audience is going to benefit from this directly, and which sort of people should also be listening to this because they're going to benefit from it indirectly?
Yeah, it's funny because sales has sort of a bad reputation in the world. And you kind of think of sales as like the used car salesman, and especially in the tech industry where I'm from, it's but on the flip side, it's sort of the lifeblood of the business, and it helps to fund the innovation that we need, in order to create better products. So first and foremost, sales is not a dirty word in this context, and you got to be able to do it right. How many companies have come up with a great technical product, and like you were saying, they know that they can solve more problems than it's being used for right now, but they just need to crack the code about getting it in front of the right people, having the right conversations, and being able to sell more licenses or however you distribute the product.
Mm-hmm.
And they would come to us either, hey, we got some funding, we've got some initial traction, and we really need to understand how to kind of take this to the next level and scale up our go-to-market. Or on the flip side, it's, hey, we've got a SDR team or a team of account executives, and they're really struggling right now, especially with building new pipeline and getting new customers in new logos. What's our next move here? And we'll unpack that with them and make suggestions. And so I think in your case, it's more of the former, in that you've got this great software, that it has potential other applications, but it's like, hey, how do we get this in front of new people and get them interested and bring them into a sales process?
Yeah, so that's going to be the direct hit. Anybody who's directly in this camp where you're building software, you're trying to connect it and find that product market fit, and you're trying to figure out an overall roadmap and strategy to take it from great concept, great idea, great software into actually being used by the people you want to. The indirect audience is everybody who wants to sort of mine this conversation for tips and tools around sales, strategy, and all the principles that are probably fairly universal.
Yeah, and it's also all about the efficiency and the amazing advances that have taken place in the tool set that we use. I mean, just over the last like 5 years, the amount of efficiency that's taken place in the sales technology world alone, notwithstanding all the other factors. So leveraging those ultimately, it's hard enough to get people's attention these days, but how do you then get them to focus long enough to look at what you're selling and then move down the sales process? It's hard, but there's been a lot of advances recently that's been able to help.
Excellent. So let's kind of use an example. We'll kind of case study this out here for us. So we built one of many bits of software that we built is called RB Sign. So we're RMB Communications. RB Sign is an e-signature, a digital signature software that we built as a competitor to DocuSign. Why? Because one of our big charter school clients was spending an exorbitant amount on DocuSign and said, hey, could you essentially give us this functionality? And not only that, have it be more nimble and customizable that we could just bolt it directly into other software that you've built for us, instead of doing these more cumbersome integrations. So the problems we're trying to solve for them were cost and call it ease of integration, to the degree that it actually functions as part of the core, the software that's there. So we accomplished that. We saved that company about 95% over the costs that they were spending on DocuSign after that development. It was seamless and fluid in there. It's great. They use it for hundreds of thousands of document signs every year with their families and students, to everybody's benefit, to the admin, to the parents, and all of that. We created like a front end version of this that's available to anybody. It's still probably a more compelling core e-signature solution than most of what's out there. And so it's probably more affordable. Comes with the ability to have a development team, truly customize it into anything else that you're using instead of having to figure out API connections and integrations on your own. So I think there's a lot of advantages to that. And we could look at that particular one as being an opportunity. What's the framework? How do you begin to think about that in terms of a bit of software about that? How do you organize your thought process around what we have and what to do with it?
Yeah, where do you start with something like that? In that, if you look at bigger picture market penetration, you've got sometimes a green field where you're in education mode and you're trying to educate people on why, and this could have been maybe 20 years ago, why e-signatures are better than faxing or something like that. And so that we've passed to some extent. I think people it's a pretty saturated market. People are pretty familiar with it and how it works, and they trust it to some extent. So you're kind of over that hump. So now it becomes, how are you differentiating from these mega competitors that you have out in the marketplace? And what is the cohort that might appeal to that differentiation? And you mentioned some really interesting stats there on especially the money, the money savings that you could potentially, and you have a case study to prove that you've been able to come in and save, a ton of money for these companies. And especially now, as we're in sort of an economic downturn, especially in the tech industry, that could be a message that really resonates. And so step number one is, who is your ideal client profile? Who in your hypothesis would be the most interested in using an e-signature product and saving money, for example, as a key value differentiator? So we'll start there. And in B2B, we usually start with accounts, the ideal client profile from a business perspective. It's going to be, this type of company. And then within those companies, who's your ideal person that you'd like to be in front of with the product? Is it a user? Is it a manager? Is it an executive decision maker? And then finally, what are the 2 or 3 biggest problems that they face as it relates to e-signatures? And that becomes your messaging, either through your inbound, advertising that you're doing, or your outbound cold calling and cold emailing that you're doing to that audience.
Mm-hmm. So I captured a couple of things there first. The first question I heard you ask is assessing, hey, where are we in the market right now? Do people understand this product and the need for it already? So if the answer is no, we need to educate them and sort of open their eyes to, hey, here's a problem or an opportunity that you haven't considered and that we have a solution for. On the other hand, they already understand the problems that it solves. They already understand the opportunity. And so in that case, your real task at that point is, how do we differentiate amongst the other competitors in the market? What's going to make us stand out? Why should somebody choose us instead of what's already out there?
Exactly. I love working with you because you restate things better than I actually say it. That's exactly right. And even in real estate transactions these days, so we're talking baby boomers and above, they're getting e-documents and they're comfortable clicking the box. So it's a market where right now, how do you stand out, and what's really going to differentiate you? And one thing I did mention too is, if you think about this in the classic scientific method of, you're starting with a hypothesis, and that's all you can really start with, because you just don't have enough information to stake your claim on a marketing campaign right now. So you're starting with a hypothesis, and your hypothesis is that, as an example, mid-market companies in Ohio who have 4 managers are usually the ones, we think, based on our hypothesis, that have this particular problem. And so what we're going to do is, over the next 90 days, we're going to start an email campaign. We're going to start retargeting them on Google, and we're going to start, cold calling them, and attempt to set up a meeting to discuss the benefits of switching from whatever e-signature they're using to ours. And we're going to try this and monitor the results, get feedback. And at the end of 90 days, we're going to see what we've learned from the campaign, if we're starting to see any traction, or if there's potentially another hypothesis that we need to start and work over the next 90 days.
Yeah, so that was 3 and 4, was figuring out, okay, what's our company profile that we're going after, which we could segment in a lot of different ways. It could be by industry, it could be by size, it could be by type. And so we want to know that, and then we want to know what position, what role within the company we're targeting. And so the combination of those factors is what you're calling our hypothesis, right? That we're we've got a general concept. Now we need to go out there and test it. And so that's kind of 4, which is what's the messaging and the medium that we're going to use to go after them with. So if we've already determined our differentiators, that should help clarify our messaging. If we've already determined the company profile and the role and have kind of gone through our avatars there and done our best to assess, well, what are their big problem sets that we think we can address? Like that combination together should help clarify our messaging. And then you're saying go after with email and cold calling and set actual meetings so we can have these conversations to like verify, are we on or not? And if we are, great, double down, refine. If we're not, then back to the drawing board with a hypothesis.
You got to go back. And it could be, that the having to set up a meeting and, go through the whole sales process is just too much for a, $5,000 product. Like we need to really, really focus on what they call like product-led growth, where we want that accountant, in Ohio to find out about this by having to sign up for the document and create an account and, kind of do a lot of it themselves, to the point where you can start to gather that information. And now you have some trends. Like we're seeing that this is taking off in this one particular area. Perhaps this could be our next hypothesis, which is we're going to, again, get the list of companies, start setting up meetings, talking to people, and potentially expand some of these accounts that have started to buy, a lower tier product from us. And so, that's another way, with especially something like a signature product. That's something that you see with some of the competitors out there.
Yeah, I was going to kind of double click on that company profile and say, when you've got something that could work, like, let's say, for something like an e-signature, maybe 70% of businesses could effectively use e-signature. Like that's too big, right? So in terms of an initial one to just go after and narrow down. So since we already have it in the charter school space, really kind of narrow it to there and figure out, okay, what other charter schools could we solve this same problem for, and hone in on that.
Yeah. Exactly. And you as a business owner, you only have so much, bandwidth that you can throw at this. So thinking of every company in the United States could use this. I mean, it's almost like a deer in the headlights problem, but charter schools, we have case studies, we have, track record. There's a limited number of charter schools, in the United States. The other thing is they probably go to the same conferences. They go to the similar blogs. They do the same search terminology in Google. They're a tribe to some extent.
Yeah.
And so getting into that bloodstream is not going to be as hard as a very generalized population, like you said.
Yeah. Excellent. Okay, great. So we lined out kind of like a framework of how to go after it, all the way to the point of the outreach itself, and then the measuring of what are our results and decisions based on what those results are. So you mentioned in particular email and cold calling as a way that you do that initial outreach. Can you kind of like drop down into those a little bit more and say, how do you begin to structure and think about that? Are you buying list? What does that process look like? How are you going about like doing cold emailing campaigns and not having your email like blocked? Like, how are you focusing on deliverability? Like, there's a whole deep trough there of everything that needs to be considered to do that stage effectively, right?
You do, yeah. You have to be careful, because especially if you've got a more established brand, you don't want to go out and destroy your brand reputation and be branded as a spammer. I mean, that's but that's one consideration in this. And so I'll just take it back from, say, step one is there's a lot of great data providers on, once I determine I want to reach out to every charter school, in the state of California.
Mhm.
Somebody out there has the latest and greatest list of all those.
Mhm.
And within those, I know that I want to reach out to the manager of document solutions at these, or whatever the usual title is. There's a number of resources to be able to find that contact information. And it's usually formatted in a way that you can get it into a central CRM. And the what they call the data hygiene is really important, because you want to make sure that you're spending as much time as possible in the right place in the limited time that you have during the day. And so thing number one is just making sure that you have that information. When you think about messaging for email, for example, it doesn't necessarily have to be mass emailing to thousands of people. It could really just be smaller cohorts, and making sure that the messaging leads to some sort of call to action,
Mhm.
and that there's enough messaging going out that you have a statistical ability to get some sort of response. So it could be that you have to send 100 to get one reply, or even anybody to click on it. It's just not everybody has the problem that you're solving at that particular time, and they're willing to respond back. So there has to be some volume aspect to it.
Yeah, you're
Uh,
dealing with a lot, the filtering, then the
yeah.
attention in that exact moment, then whether or not, if there is even an open or a read, is the timing right in terms of the problem or the priority of the problem.
Exactly. Yeah. Are they dealing with that right now? And when you're going outbound, like in this case, it is to some extent a volume play, because there could be only a very small subset of people who happen to get the message, and they go, that is a problem that I have. I'd like to meet up with you and discuss that further.
Mhm.
And it's very similar if you're making a lot of calls. If you're calling people, we all know that if you see a phone number that you don't recognize, you might not take it.
There's the
It's hard
filter.
to
Yep.
make that connection.
Yep.
And so the message is the same. It's I talk to a lot of charter schools, and they struggle with the cost of like a DocuSign, and we've been able to save, a tremendous. I'm just riffing, but we've been able to save a tremendous amount of money by taking a look at this new solution that we have.
Mhm.
Do you have a minute to talk? And uh, you could see how you might have to call 100 people to have that brief conversation and be able to set up a meeting. So that piece, it takes a lot of work, to get those meetings set.
Let me kind of yeah, I want to hit you up on a couple more of those. So the
Yeah.
first would be when you're going about trying to get that list, do you have ways that you are searching for and vetting the potential providers of these lists? And how are they like able to do what they do? Like what gives them the ability to resell data like that?
Yeah, I mean, so there's kind of two sides to that. One is just the technical ability to go out and find companies and find contact information.
Mhm.
And some of these companies are they're very big, successful companies, even listed on the stock exchange. The data vendor business is a really big business, and they put a lot of resources into finding that contact information and selling it to people like me and you.
Mhm.
So it's out there. And from a legal perspective, there is a lot of red tape that you have to go through to buy data, and it's usually on the data vendor side to make sure that they're following the GDPR and CCPA and all these different regulations to make sure that they're selling clean data that's been opted into. And then when you get it, the onus comes on you as the solicitor, to follow all the rules of those companies. So you got to be careful too.
So when
Um,
you get
yeah,
a fresh
yeah,
list like that, what are you running it through to kind of further clean it up and get it down to, because obviously like you get it. I don't know what percentage of those contacts are still viable, how many of the emails are still legit emails, how much of that data is still accurate, right?
yeah. Well, I mean, and with our clients, we really try to go from a angle of using LinkedIn, especially, and this is for B2B. So
Mhm.
if someone's in the a different industry, it might not make sense.
Right.
But being a little bit more careful on, are they working at the company? Are they legit? Are we getting some signal that uh, this is the right target? And if we are getting some kind of indication, then it would be appropriate to send an email. And so if you're trying to send a big bulk email out, you may have to register a specific domain for that, and keep it sort of off of your main brand domain, or you might end up getting blacklisted from
Yeah, we actually
those
we've
things. Yeah.
provided that particular service for some large
Mhm.
marketing clients of our own,
Yeah.
not using it in our own regard because we really don't have that strategy in place at R&B, but understanding the need that they had to be able to do these mass mailings without becoming blacklisted.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
You want to make sure that you're following all the regulations, and this, it's tough out there because you're under pressure, to talk to enough people to be able to be able to set up a meeting. But at
Yeah.
the same time, there's a lot of regulation involved in making sure that you're not doing anything, shady.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
experimenting or exploring right now with conversational AI,
Mhm.
which seems insanely effective for like B2C.
Yeah.
But for B2B, one of the biggest challenges is you usually do not just call up a number and get the person that you want to talk to.
Yeah.
You call up a number, you get a phone tree, or you get an agent or assistant of some sort that's, kind of has to gatekeep and navigate you through there. So you have to deal with all these logic trees if you want to use conversational AI in a B2B environment most of the time, unless it's very small businesses where the owner might actually pick up and like that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, it helps to it's a longer term play, but if you've got some content, if you've got a effective advertising program, and you can get some inbound leads coming in that are opted in,
Yes.
then nurturing that list and building trust and being able to then offer the new solutions that you're putting out, it's a lot easier than trying to go outbound.
Exactly. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what we've leveraged so far.
But
It's
it's a long-term play. I mean, it may take quite a while to build up a list that's, big enough to be able to be effective. And in the meantime, you're running out of runway. You need to go out and talk to people and be able to set up some meetings. So it's a tough balance.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about like underused features or AI features that you're leaning into a lot. In fact, this particular feature that you mentioned made it to our Zoom meeting before you did. And
Yes.
that's
Much
your
more
AI
punctual.
assistant. Yeah, you're using this AI assistant for calendar booking, note taking, and described as being a pretty essential member of your team now. Can you tell us a little bit about like what you're using, how you're using it, and what kind of difference it's making for you?
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think with these tools that are coming out, the more seamless they are in your workflow, the more adoption you're going to get. And I mean, it sounds super basic, but with this particular one, it's called Pattern, and it's getpattern.ai if you want to check it out. and it essentially, sits in my calendar and jumps onto Zoom calls. And this is an example where Jacob and I had set up a Zoom call, and it just sort of popped up even before I did. And so the host or myself always has the ability to kick it out, if it's not welcome. But what it does is essentially transcribes the call, and then summarizes it into the various to-dos that I promised and the other person promised, and the key points of the call that we can go back and research afterwards. And I have been using this for several months now, and it's gotten to the point where it's almost like having this personal assistant following me around, because I do 99% of my calls on Zoom.
Yep.
And especially in our advisory work, it's there's just key parts of the conversation that I want to go back and really dig in on and be able to extrapolate, and it's just been super helpful for me.
That's excellent. And apparently Zoom thinks it's a good enough idea because last week they added Start Summary and AI Companion within the Zoom platform itself, which for me as a host or us already in there, we have that functionality. I'm not sure if it could accomplish this extra piece that you're describing, which is basically, hey, it's integrated to your calendar, so it's going there on your behalf. So clearly this functionality is making its way across Zoom, which means it's going to be key element of Teams and Meet as well. And we can just now always expect that we're going to be able to have AI there that's going to summarize and catch us up on what did we miss so far, what's like an overview of the meeting, what were the important takeaways, what are my to-dos, and be able to query like that. Huge productivity gains, because how many meetings do you just go to, and then it was like, all right, what exactly did we cover? Did we make sure that we hit everything we needed to? So that, do you get like an email summary of it as well afterwards, or
you do? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So you get a summary, and then you go back to sort of a landing page for the meeting, and the whole meeting is recorded and it's sitting there, and then you can skip to parts, and the summary and the key points are there. And to your point, it's like in knowledge work, we're 99% of our day is meetings and conversations and talking and summarizing and making a list, and then the little bit of time we have between meetings, it's okay, I got to go do those things. And it's like that, and guilty as charged. I mean, I'm sure that in the past it's been like, what did I agree to do?
Yeah.
What are we doing now? Or what did they say in that one point that was really, really important to nailing this? And now I feel like I have that ability.
One thing that caught me, David, was like, I did a catch up or summary, and it says they talked about this, and this. They said that this was a really good thing, but you know what it added in that was so crucial? But they didn't actually determine like a resolution or next steps to get it done.
Yeah.
And just like put it right back in my face. And I was like, sure enough, there we go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about this is we're just like scratching the surface. I feel like with all the AI hype that's taken place over the last year or so, these are we're still in kind of like the infancy, I feel like, of what these things can do and what they will be able to do. And so it's exciting and frightening, at the same time. But for now, it's really cool and really helpful.
That's exactly it. I mean, that's what inspired this podcast and platform into being, was seeing how much we needed to be creating a place where people are building a foundation in the tools they already have, and we're prepared to be like handheld and shepherded into the AI transformations that are and will affect every business. Well, thank you so much for being a part of building this foundation. I was thinking for you, an interesting way to go through is to use like a framework of one of our own, and then it would help to pinpoint how you help businesses with each of these areas. So I could like, I'll say one step along like a customer development cycle, and then you give a quick snapshot on like what you do to help a business in that area. And then we'll give everybody the links back to you and the resource. I think they can download a free chapter of your book to get oriented to what you do and some of your insights.
We do. Yeah. Yeah. You can get the first few chapters, and it'll be a quick summary of some of the stuff that we've been talking about in working on your ideal customer profile and getting your go-to-market strategy in place.
All right. Well, let's try this out. Let's see how this goes. So I'll say the phase of the customer development cycle, and then you say kind of your approach or the service or solution or support that you offer there. So the first would be very beginning of the lead capture.
Yeah. Okay. So they come inbound and we have their name and email address. Is that right?
Yeah, hopefully.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So thing number one is making sure that we have the messaging set up for that particular persona. And the only real way to tell is to be able to check them out and see who they are. And so making sure that there's a sequence of messaging that's ready for them when they do come in, and it leads to potentially either an online or live conversation.
All right, excellent. So that covered kind of lead capture as well as lead nurture, the next portion of that. All right, lead capture, lead nurture, the sales process.
Yeah, well, thing number one is make sure that you have a sales process and it's written down. You'd be surprised that salespeople are art and a little bit of science, but mostly art, and they like to do things their own way. So if you take anything away from this, it's sit down and write out, on a one pager, what is your sales process, going from the opening of the call to the questions that you ask, to backing it up to the next steps, and then what the proposal process is going to look like to bring it home. Get it down on paper and get a version 1 so that it becomes scalable.
Excellent. All right. So capture, nurture, sales, delivery.
Well, I'm a big fan of mutual action plans, and if you should have a mutual action plan for any customer that's above a certain size. If it's a sub $1,000 customer, it should be pretty much self-serve. But if it's something more strategic, make sure that you have some sort of mutual action plan. It can just be a shared Google Doc that says, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z by X, Y, and Z date, and you're going to do X, Y, and Z by X, Y, and Z date. And we make sure that we bring that up and look at it on our check-in calls to make sure that we're both doing what we agreed to, and you're getting the full value from this product, and you're not, in the dark. So,
all right, stated and then followed up on payments and invoicing.
Well, as much as you possibly can, especially when you're small, try to offer a yearly prepayment discount and encourage people to pay yearly and in a lump sum. Offer credit cards and online payment plans. Make it as easy as possible to collect cash up front and get it in the bank. For the bigger clients, if they want to net 30, net 40, net 60, stuff like that, do your best to make that payment plan as short as possible, and keep track. As soon as they miss it, be sure that you're in touch and following up on all the invoices.
Excellent. And then the follow-up, let's call it follow-up and ascension.
Well, I mean, the best case scenario is that everybody becomes a case study, and they love you to the point where they're happy to tell their friends and family. And sometimes the worst customers that give you the hardest time end up being the best because you bent over backwards to save them. But I think, you want every single customer to potentially become a case study.
Perfect. All right. Well, that's it, gang, for the public version of this episode with David Dulany. Check out the notes below if you want to join the Productivity Hub, become a full member, get our member-only bonus content. Go ahead and click in there and check that out. Check out the other links back to Tenbound and some of the other resources that we talked about here today. And go ahead and like and subscribe. Leave a comment with what you got the most value from and what else you'd like to learn from David next visit. All right. Thanks so much.